I stole hers. Good morning. Welcome to Life Science Success Podcast. My name is Don. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a consultant in life sciences. I help companies manage complexity and increase performance. And before we get into today's podcast, I just wanted to quickly mention the new company that we have. So D3 Digital Marketing is helping organizations in our space establish a digital media presence. And so for organizations that are interested, feel free to go to our website at d3dm.com. So today on the podcast, my guest is Keren Leshem. Keren's currently the CEO and a director board member at OCON Healthcare, an innovative women's healthcare company with a mission to introduce safer intrauterine drug delivery technology to improve and impact women's health and quality of life. Welcome, Keren.
Thank you for having me, Don. It's great to be
Yes,
here.
it's great to have you. And I noticed the graphic behind you is also like an outline of a woman. Very interesting.
Yeah, it was a trial to get, a little bit more feminine kind of approach to our walls in the office.
Oh,
We
very nice.
like it.
Very nice. And so, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I always say that I'm currently the head slave here at OCON Healthcare. Being in this industry, trying to navigate between clinical operations and all the medical stuff and fundraising and getting the best team together and all of the other fun hurdles. Um, yeah, so I have been here in this position for about 3 years now. I love what I do and I do what I love. We really focus on women's health and more specifically women's uterine health. Throughout our life stages, we are blessed, I could say, with a lot of indications, conditions, pathologies that need specific treatment. And so I'm really happy a company like OCON exists. Um, yeah, and I'm in the age where the reproductive is done, and now I'm going to enter into a different era. And so, also for me as a woman, it's super interesting to learn more about our bodies and our cycles, and how that works, and to be able to educate the next generation is fantastic. So I feel very privileged to be here and to be also escorted by a ton of really fantastic people that support us along the way.
I think it's such an important topic overall. Just, I mean, I've interviewed a lot of people inside of life sciences, and we don't talk a lot about women's health. And so, and I know there are companies that do focus on it. I know that there are companies that have, kind of aging pipelines of things that they've done as well. And but whenever I looked at OCON and the things that you're doing, it seemed very interesting from a lot of different perspectives that I'm hoping that we can, dive into as well. Maybe just take a moment and tell everybody a little bit about OCON. What specifically are you focused on, and what sort of stage are you at this point?
So we are a startup. We're based in Israel. We developed a very unique way to deliver drugs directly to the uterus. So, in essence, our mission is to really, on one hand, move away from oral therapeutics that have an array of side effects, they have compliance issues, and they're not necessarily the best way of targeting the uterus through the mouth. And so, on one hand, we want to move away from oral formulations, but on the other hand, we also want to make sure that devastating procedures, such as hysterectomies to remove the uterus out, are not so common. We want to make sure to treat the target tissue where these indications, pathologies, diseases occur, and also place a device. One of my great colleagues says, set it and forget it. You place a device and it takes care of your condition. And you don't have to worry about swallowing a pill or going into the hospital to get some procedure done. And so these are safer ways. And also the way we do it is we look at the female anatomy a lot closer. So devices that were devised, for the women's bodies, I don't know, they came out 80 years ago, 90 years ago. They don't fit our anatomy. They're plastic, from plastic. They twist, they turn, they hurt, they perforate. They're too big usually for the average size of our cavity of our uterus. And so we designed a stent that looks like a little ball. I can show you how it looks like. Looks like a little ball. And this little ball goes inside the uterus. It's very soft and pliable, right? So you can really push on it and it's very soft. It folds on itself. So it really does fit our cavity a lot better. And then we can release drugs to treat really prevalent indications. 1 in 3 women that suffer from heavy bleeding, 7 in 10 women that will experience a fibroid by the age of 50, 8 out of 10 women of color. These are huge, huge unmet needs. 1 out of 10 suffering from endometriosis, even though today it's believed to be even 1 out of 6. And so these are very prevalent diseases that we want to cater to.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing from an endometriosis standpoint is that the time to diagnosis is also like 7 years, right? So it's really unfortunate in terms of, the suffering that women go through all the way up to the point of actually figuring out, that, hey, look, you have endometriosis, this heavy bleeding that you experience and pain every month isn't normal. And, it's great that somebody has something for focusing in on that.
Yeah, I'm very optimistic. We don't deal on the diagnostic side, but because now, women's health has become a topic of conversation, there's a lot more education around it. So I'm very optimistic as time goes by and a lot more people hear about the different pathologies and indications. They know to ask, is this, my indication, or can you rule out that it's not? So I'm excited to have conversations like these in the media to make sure that women are aware that there are issues out there, not to normalize our pain, not to normalize our bleeding or any experiences that we have.
So, in terms of like your career journey, what was it like? In now being CEO, what was your career journey like to become the CEO of OCON?
So I with OCON specifically, I stumbled across this area. Before OCON, I was in ophthalmology for about 15 years, dealing with eye disease. I can't tell you that it was more or less interesting. It was very different. Um, it wasn't gender focused in any way. But I've done life sciences since I remember, my career path. And I've done a lot in the clinical and preclinical and a lot of fundraising, of course, and business development. And so I stumbled across OCON here. I came to really help the company organize its strategy around some of our products. And it turned out that the board really wanted to make a change. And so we've done a full restart and we really gave the company a good chance. And I told the investors, this company is great. The IP is so strong. You'd be crazy to shut it down. Get a CEO that knows how to do strategy. We need to go to the US. And so 3 months later, I found myself with this job, and 3 years later, with an additional maybe 20 kilos.
Oh,
That's how much
good.
fun it's been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did notice. I mean, a nice sized team, right? You have as well at OCON, and it looks to me like you're working on three independent things. So maybe we should, just kind of tell listeners a little bit about. One of them looked like it was birth control. The second one was more endometrial ablation, and I honestly can't remember right at this moment what the third is. But that's my mental summary. So sorry.
Wow, amazing, Don, amazing. Well, yes, well, the first ball that we kind of created was one that really validated the platform. Is a ball the right, thing for the uterus? Can doctors use it? Will women wear it? And we did a quick kind of go to market in Europe because there it's considered a more simple device, or was considered a more simple device. And we placed this IUB, we call it intrauterine ball, in over 130,000 women, including the CEO, to really get and collect data, post-market surveillance on how it behaves. Is it safer? Is it more tolerable? And we've done that well in order to introduce really the balls for the indications that we discussed. So yes, the first product is a contraception. It's a non-hormonal copper IUD. It's still available in markets where doctors really want to have it available for their customers, for their women. But we're very focused on the indications, as you mentioned. We're working on 2 additional IUBs for heavy bleeding. One would be non-hormonal and a 30-minute procedure, and the other would be a hormonal version that would stay in our body for a couple of years.
Very interesting. And I mean, I guess is the and maybe I should have asked you this question ahead of time. Is there any sort of thinking in terms of doing the same thing for women that still have their uterus later in life, for menopausal women?
Absolutely, absolutely. We want to really tackle any and all indications, pathologies, and requirements that you could treat through the uterus. So HRT, absolutely. These are expensive hobbies. We need to find ways to kind of fund them. So the progress is a lot slower than I would like to see. But definitely, we're looking at menopause after the fibroids and the endometriosis. And we will also look at cancers. One of the things, which is our dream, is to really put a chip on these balls that we wear inside our bodies. There's so much to learn from the uterus. There's a microbiome complete field that's now, opening up, and we could look at infertility or fertility issues. We could look at any changes to the lining of the uterus to see any cancer formations. And of course, there's a ton of vitamins and minerals in the uterus that we could monitor and look at. So those are kind of our big dreams on this little IUB ball.
And I mean, it is unfortunate, right? I mean, if you knew more about the uterus and like what was happening, maybe as many hysterectomies, wouldn't be needed, because maybe you could detect, kind of that lack of health, and do something, to adjust it. It's similar to, our microbiome. I've done, an awful lot of analysis of my own microbiome, and just to try and better understand my own body. And I can only imagine, if you had more information about your uterus, hopefully you could prevent, severe things from happening, like having to have it or your ovarian ovaries removed, in addition to the uterus. So yeah.
Well, it's not only a matter of just understanding the uterus; it's also providing access. We're very privileged because we live in very modern countries that have money, dedicated towards healthcare. But in less fortunate territories, low to mid income, or the eastern parts of the world, they don't have access to these therapeutics or medications, and so the easiest thing really is to remove the uterus. And this has so many implications on mental health and how our body is imaged. It's really unfortunate. So it's also creating access with therapeutics that are much cheaper, easier, and simpler, that can be utilized without any machines or any need to invest any money in the communities, and in the doctor's offices, moving away from hospitals. So those really are our fundamental, mission statements here at OCON.
Yeah, one of the things that I would encourage people to do is to go to the OCON website and have a look at the three balls. The person on the website is holding, all three, kind of on the initial picture, and so you have an opportunity to kind of gain an understanding of, what it is, what's available at OCON. I guess, what stage right now are each of your products?
So it's a mix. Each one is at a different stage. The first one that created the validation of the platform is commercial outside the United States. This year, we're going to launch in Canada and in Mexico. And hopefully within the next couple of years, we'll see our launches in Japan and China, and other territories in South America. The second product now is in phase 2B clinical study, so it's quite progressed. We're looking at the data, and it's really, really exciting to see. Because behind the data, there's a woman there that is suffering from anemia and that is bleeding and that is very unhappy. She's unable to work or be a mom or be a spouse to someone. And these are life-changing treatments that these women, experience. And we get letters, and it's very, very exciting. And so the data on the phase 2B is looking really, really promising. And the third product, which is the hormonal version for the abnormal bleeding, we've already done a working prototype. So we know how to load drug. We know how to make sure that it's released on a daily and monthly dose. So that's exciting. We're waiting to go into animals and then later on into women.
Yeah, absolutely exciting, and such a great thing. I mean, like you said, I know from being around women that have experienced, kind of the impact of endometriosis in the past. That up to weeks before their cycle starts, they could be experiencing severe pain and having to lay on the couch and things like that to just sort of um, you know, hopefully stem the tide until the point where the pain goes away, and then they can function again for most of another month. So it's really unfortunate, and it would be great to have another treatment available in the marketplace.
I agree.
So my next question, it really focuses in on the World Economic Forum. So I noticed on your website, I mean, you have it, on the side panel as well. It's mentioned that in 2022 you were spotlighted, but also there's some exciting news for 2023. So can you tell us a little bit about what the World Economic Forum is, and then secondly, just to share with us a little bit about what award you're receiving for this year.
My one of the things that I always say is that I make a lot of noise, and we won a lot of prizes. Our technology is just super cool. It's super cool because it just makes sense. And we're very, very excited. I think that one of the prizes we're most proud of is the World Economic Forum for two reasons. One, because we, as an Israeli company, were noticed by, the forum in general. And so that's exciting. I think we're the only company in Israel in the forum in healthcare. So that's also kind of like a milestone that we could be proud of. But the other thing that got us very excited is that the World Economic Forum sees women's health as a spotlight, as a focus that needs policy change. And what's exciting about that is that OCON can be part of that policy change. And the World Economic Forum has been very good at arranging meetings for the technology pioneers to exchange ideas, exchange thoughts about policy. We have our own community where we are able to also network with governments, with big organizations. And so this really opens up a huge path for us as a private company, but also women's health in general, to have a little bit more focus and spotlight. People that know me know that I want to help every single women's health company, regardless of where they are or what they do, because success in women's health means more health for women. So I don't believe there's any competition here. The more funding and the more exits and the more collaborations we can make, those would really progress this, blue ocean. And so that's great for us. And I'm really looking forward also to 2023. There are a few awards that are coming up, and we will, of course, put those on LinkedIn and on our website. But as we continue to innovate and release data from our studies, I think that's very exciting. So we'll continue to make a lot of noise.
Well, and it's good to make noise as a startup, because I think it's it's one of those things that people can quickly forget as well, and kind of get on with the other things that are going on. But at the same time, it is a very important mission that you're under as well as an organization. So
I think that this area of health is an area where it needs a lot of education. Even us as women need a lot of education on our own bodies and our own symptoms. Today I was thinking that between me and OCON and some of my management and team members, we have over 20,000 followers on LinkedIn. Can you imagine those 20,000 people have an additional 40, 50, 60,000 people that follow them? So we are able to educate really quite easily just by bringing these discussions up to where they need to be. So very privileged, really very privileged to be able to be part of this innovation.
Yeah, and I didn't know that you had that sort of following, but always interesting because as I approach 10,000, I keep getting closer and closer to that number. I'm like, well, I wonder when it'll cross, overall. But it's great to have more and more people, sort of in your pool and in the sphere of influence that you have, and that you can communicate with at least, and
Yeah.
share the story. So that's great. What are the biggest challenges that you face right now at OCON?
I always say this, the biggest challenge is funding. Women's health has now been in the spotlight, but I think that still in this industry, the check sizes are very small. And they're okay if you want to do a digital app, if you maybe want to bring forward a diagnostic. But when you really look at therapeutics and a platform of therapeutics, that's expensive. Clinical studies are expensive. The regulatory pathways are expensive. And so we don't need a few millions, we need tens of millions. And for that, we need the bigger venture capitalists to kind of step in where they're more focused on later stage opportunities and opportunities in the brain, in cardiology, in cancer. They still don't see OBGYN or gynecology focused startups as something that would be as big as, unfortunately. And so that's our daily fight, is to get funding and to get, really these programs funded. That's our biggest hurdle. Other than that, the data looks good, the team's great. We get so much support from women, from doctors. So that's really one of our biggest hurdles.
Yeah, it really seems to me like there's a distinct opportunity with your organization as well. I mean, given the fact that you have, positives, stage 2B clinical data for your second device, is one example. But yeah, I'm always interested to hear these stories as well, because to me it sort of points to the need of acceleration in capital, but also just an understanding in the space. And it's funny because I've had two conversations now with newly formed, I would say, VC firms where they're talking about really accelerating the pathway for a lot of organizations, and one will be interviewed in the next month or so. So I think there's a real opportunity to sort of just talk about what is the funding pathway for a lot of organizations? Why does it always have to be, so slow? We also see a lot of people that invest that don't really understand the space. And so, that's another concern of mine. As somebody that normally helps, companies, grow, I don't want to help them grow only to see them sort of get killed off in the end. It doesn't really help, and it turns out to be a waste of overall time for everybody. So there's a real opportunity for organizations that do understand the space and that are passionate about some of these treatments as well. So whether men lead it or women lead it, to me the funding is important for all of these organizations, so critical.
Sure. Well, I read last year that only 4% of all the money invested in startups went to women. That's a little shocking. I never see myself as a woman. I see myself as a
Mhm.
professional. And so I've
Right.
never done this gender kind of, competition even. But that's a little sad, right? It's a little sad on the one hand. And on the other hand, we raised $10 million, I think, in the last year or so. And the biggest check was 1 million. Can you imagine? So these are all
Wow.
smaller people that just want to come behind this great innovation and to say, we're here for you. Here's $200, $200,000, $250,000. Even through LinkedIn, I've had people come in and say, you know what, we love what you do. Here's a little boost. And imagine how hard it is to invest or to recruit that type of money from small little checks. It's really, really, really burdensome. So I'm very hopeful that we get more traction in women's health, more exits, more funding, so that, and that's why I make time to really help entrepreneurs in the space, with introduction to investors, introduction to, some of the players in the industry, to make sure that we really are all on the map.
My next question is, what are the biggest opportunities for OCON?
So I think partnering up with global players that can really size up and create value. At the end of the day, we're an amazing R&D hub, but we don't have the commercial capabilities of some of the bigger, players in the industry. So I think that's a huge advantage for a player to put their hand on a device that would act as a platform, and they could put on their own drugs. They could choose, different drugs, the drugs that we're working on. So it really gives them a huge opportunity to have almost like a toolkit for doctors to have one system that they can introduce into the uterus to treat a different number of diseases.
Yes, very important as well. So my last three questions, I ask every guest: what inspires you?
Um, I don't know, the sun coming up inspires me. I can tell you that the things that, really come close to heart is the fact that I have a little girl, and I want her to have options. I see my team, which is 85% women, work so, so hard every day. That's true inspiration. And I see the patients that we treat that come back and say, oh my gosh, I can live. And so that's such a huge inspiration. And also, a lot of a lot of our investors that put money on our heads to say, we believe in you guys. You guys can do it. That keeps me up at night on one hand, but also super motivated on the other. And so yeah, those are the things I think inspire me most.
Thank you for sharing that. What concerns you?
On the micro element, some things that are happening with our government here locally is very concerning. On a macro level, on a worldwide level, these are not the easiest times. We've been through a big, event with COVID, and now we're trying to get up and move on. And, the recession hit us. And so those are things that are very concerning. At the end of the day, we all want to, have a good livelihood and be able to do so in a democracy. So those are the things that worry me a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last question: what excites you?
I would say really the little things, getting a nice email or support. I think that even like a good meal or meeting with some friends, those are things that are super exciting. Getting some good news from a regulatory authority,
Yeah,
seeing my kids grow, those are exciting things. All of a sudden that they could, speak another language or do something quicker than me on my phone. That's pretty exciting and annoying, but exciting and
yeah,
annoying.
for sure. Well, Keren Leshem, thank you so much for being on the Life Science Success Podcast. I greatly appreciate you being here and sharing with us everything that you're doing at OCON. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Don, for having me. This was such a wonderful conversation. I appreciate it.
Thanks.